Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming out on short notice today. Sorry for keeping you waiting. I'm joined today by the President of the Conservative Party of British Columbia, Asia Este. Always have to worry about getting that name right, as well as the Acting President for the BC United Party, Ryan Bruce. Yeah. Thank you. As well, of course, the leader of BC United, Kevin Falcon. At this time, I'd like to turn the podium over to Kevin to make some comments.
Thank you, John, and thank you all for joining me. Politics, for me, has always been about doing what is best in the interests of British Columbians. I've spent my entire adult life fighting not only the NDP and their brand of left-wing socialism, but also fighting to unite the centre-right. I did that in the 90s when we were trying to bring together the Provincial Reform Party and the BC Conservative Party at the time to coalesce together under the BC Liberal Party. And now as a BC United Party, again, the name is about trying to unite people. But what became apparent to me as I've crisscrossed the province and heard from literally tens of thousands of people is the number one major concern that they had. And that is, Kevin, if you guys don't do the right thing and be the adults in the room and help bring together that free enterprise, center-right, common sense coalition, you are going to help elect an NDP government. And all of you that know me know that there is nothing more important to me and my children and your children and grandchildren that we not give the NDP one more day in power than they absolutely have to have. And that's why I made the decision that I made as leader of BC United to suspend our campaign. I will be withdrawing our candidate nominations, and in cooperation with John Rustad, we will work together to assemble the best possible team of MLAs and candidates that can serve the best interests of British Columbians. That is not a decision that gets made today. I know there's all kinds of speculation about different names. We're not going to be going into all that because we still are going to have individual conversations with all of those folks. It is a process that will take some weeks, there's no doubt. But I do want, as I said to my candidates on a call today, I've had a couple of calls. One was a call with the board of directors of BC United Party who endorsed the decision that I'm making here today. I also had a call with my caucus and my candidates. And it wasn't an easy call, and I knew it wouldn't be. This is hard. It's really hard. And I accept all the responsibility, good and bad. All the opprobrium should rest on my shoulders. That's what leadership's all about. But I also believe this. This is the right thing to do for the province of British Columbia. This is the right thing to do for that next generation of British Columbians that want to grow up in a province like we grew up in, where hope and optimism were not the exception, but the rule. And that's why I've made the decision that I made today. I also want to say to John and I met for many, many hours. I know these things happen quickly. That's just the nature of it. Already word and rumors getting out, that's just the nature of our business. But I want to say that, John, I appreciated the graciousness of you and your staff. And I think it's important for all my people to know this, that there was a genuine graciousness on both sides and a willingness to say, let's park a lot of our own disagreements, etc., and let's think about what's in the best interests of the broader population of British Columbia. And so I want to thank all of my exceptional staff, many of whom will be feeling extremely disappointed today. And I know why they'll be feeling extremely disappointed. But I want them all to know, whether staff, whether caucus colleagues, whether candidates, whether supporters, I want them all to know that I have a line of sight into a whole range of areas that impact what kind of campaign we can run. And I can look them all in the eye and say to them, this is the right thing for us as a party, and it's the right thing for British Columbians. And with that, I thank you. Turn it over to John.
Thank you, Kevin. And I have to say, I want to echo something Kevin said. This is not an easy thing to be able to do. The United Party certainly has had 50 candidates that are out there, and it's not just candidates, but it's their teams and all the staff that is behind it, all the people working on these teams. This has created a lot of disruption, and I really feel for that, because I know, for example, I mean, we've got 83, 84 candidates now out there, and I know how they feel in terms of if we were in that same situation, and it's not easy. And this will be a process that we have committed to working between the BC United Party with the Conservative Party to make sure that we put the best field forward that we can to bring an end to the destructive policies of David Eby and David Eby's government. I want to thank Kevin especially. Kevin has shown some real leadership in stepping up to the plate, as he has in so many other things that he's done throughout both his political career and his working career. I think Kevin has shown himself to really, put the interests of the province first, and I can't thank him more for the work that he is doing. We have a ton of work that we need to do together, and that we need to do with all of us in British Columbia. And I invite everybody that's been part of the United Party, that's been part of those teams, to look and to join us. We will have lots of opportunities to be able to be engaged and be involved in various things. And we want to make sure that everybody feels welcome as part of our party. Because as I've always said, it's not about being conservative or liberal or NDP or Green for that matter. It's just standing for what's right, fighting for the average everyday person, and bringing common sense change back to British Columbia. There are so many things that have been raised around the province with what David Eby is doing in this province. And I won't bother boring you with all the details here at the moment. But what I can say is when I travel around the province, people are saying enough is enough. They want change. They want to see a positive future. When 1 in 3 British Columbians are thinking about leaving this province, when 1 in 2 youth are thinking about leaving this province, that says something very strongly about the despair that this province has realizing under an NDP government. And that's why, quite frankly, I'm so thrilled and pleased that we're able to bring this together, even though I know it's very tough on a lot of people. But by doing this, we are going to have the best opportunity possible to bring an end to these radical policies, to the destruction that's happening in British Columbia, and to make sure that people can be positive about building a good future. So with that, I'd like to take any questions. Kevin and I would both like to take any questions. Once again, Kevin, thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate that, John. Thank you. All right.
Kevin, it's Jordan Armstrong from Global News. I wanted to ask you that, given the statements you've had in the past, including the recent past, you said in November, quote, "Frankly, I don't think there's any scenario in which John Rustad would be remotely ready to step into the position of Premier." That's what you said in November. And more recently, in May, you said, quote, "From a values point of view, our group couldn't run with candidates that try to equate vaccines with Nazism and apartheid, etc." How do you square statements like that, recent statements like that, with what you're saying today?
Sure. Well, one of the things that I appreciated in our meeting with John is we talked about the importance of selecting and fielding the best possible group of candidates. And we're both in an agreement on that. And John acknowledged that their vetting process isn't quite as rigorous as ours is. But there's a commitment to work together to make sure that the BC Conservative Party fields the best possible candidates. And I think that's the right way to move forward. Look, in politics, especially when you're fighting each other, this fight would have continued right into the campaign. And all I will say is this, that I appreciated John's willingness to recognize that let's agree on one thing, and that is to field the best possible candidates in the next election.
How would you describe yourselves now? I mean, you guys were political friends and enemies. Are you frenemies now? Like, what are you?
Look, honestly, in politics, John and I are the same in that we're both pretty straight up people, and that's how we speak to each other. And even last night, John, I think you wouldn't mind me saying this. I said to John, I may only agree with about 75% of what you might believe in. But I do know this, that on his very worst day, John Rustad would be a far better Premier than David Eby on his very best day. And I've never lost sight of that bigger picture. Because right now I can tell you in British Columbia that we are facing a situation where we've got a government that in 8 short years has doubled the provincial debt to over $100 billion, giving us the largest deficits in provincial history tied to the worst outcomes we've ever seen in healthcare, crime, public safety, drugs.
job lined up in the private sector?
No, I don't.
Any offers?
I doubt I'll get many, but who knows?
Hi there, Penny Daflos from CTV News. Kevin, just yesterday morning, you told reporters at an announcement that seemed like your campaign was very healthy, and you said, quote, "We feel very good about our prospects." What happened overnight?
Well, you know, the thing about negotiations like this is you have to understand that you have to continue moving forward as a party while you're having a two-track discussion. That's just the way it is. You can't stop everything and then just start having conversations, which is why I appreciate it. John and I spent many, many hours together. There's a lot of tough issues we had to go through, but there was a spirit of graciousness and a spirit of understanding that we're doing this for the broader public interest. So we have to park some of our preconceptions and all the rest of it and work together for the right outcome, and we did that. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Joe. You're good.
Second question is for John. Anyhow, I think that voters, they're going to be obviously paying a lot of attention to this, even though Kevin had said that voters aren't paying attention to politics in the summertime. Clearly they will today. So can you tell people right now which candidates, which policies from BC United do you plan to adopt within your party, if any?
So like I said, we plan to work together to go through a process. Our intention is to field the best candidates we can, make sure that we got the best team possible for the betterment of British Columbia. That will be a process that we go through. We're certainly going to have a conversation about some policy as well, in terms of some of the things that they're thinking about and some of the things that we're thinking about. And there may be some things that we consider adopting as part of what we will be doing as the Conservative Party.
Thank you.
This is for Mr. Falcon. I'm Daryl Greer from the Canadian Press. Some of your party insiders did not know this was even going on today. What would you say to those staffers that you were talking about, their disappointment? What would you say to them now that this kind of unexpected turn of events has transpired?
Well, because what I would say to them is I'm sorry that I couldn't bring them all into the fold. But you can imagine that these are extremely sensitive discussions. And candidly, I wasn't even certain that we would get to a good conclusion in these discussions. But what was so important to me was that I needed my team to know and our supporters to know, our supporters that were saying to me, Kevin, we can't support two parties. And I needed to know that I could look them in the eye and say I made every effort to do the right thing for the province. And I didn't have any strong sense that it would end in a successful outcome. But I think given John and his staff's graciousness and the ability and the recognition that working together is better than fighting each other, we were able to come to a solution. So my message to the staff, many of whom I didn't have an opportunity to talk to, is I'm sorry I didn't have that opportunity. But that is the nature of very, very highly sensitive negotiations.
And for Mr. Rustad, when you say that the best field is going to be put forward, does that mean that candidates in your party who already have the nominations may be replaced or supplanted by former BC United candidates?
We aren't going into any details today. We are putting together a group between the two parties to do a review and make sure that we are fielding the best team possible.
So is that a possibility, though, that people who have already got nominated through your party's process can be
We're not
replaced?
making any decisions like that today. We are going to be going through a process between the two parties to make decisions as to who would be the best to be able to field to bring an end to David Eby and the destruction he's bringing to British Columbia.
So yes or no? Is it a possibility? Yes or no?
We're going to field the best team that we can. We're going through a process. Thank you.
My question is about money, about political donations. What happens now to BC United, what BC United has raised?
Well, we will have to make sure that working with the board and working with our staff, we will make sure that we pay off all our vendors and make sure that we deal with all our staffing issues. There's a whole number of issues that we'll have to deal with, but I'm pleased to have the board and executive support to make sure we do that responsibly.
Does the money get transferred to the
I'm not going to get into those kind of details right now. So there's far too many minutiae details like that I just wouldn't or couldn't have the answers for you right now.
And just a final question, was there a specific turning point that made you come to this point? Because it has been a rocky road, there has been, it's been going along for a while. What was the real turning point?
Yeah, it doesn't happen overnight. But candidly, as I crisscross the province, there was a dichotomy that was happening. I'm still getting really good crowds showing up at my events and all that kind of stuff. And yet, the media are all reporting in the polls that we're doing really terrible. And who knows? But I do know this, that even the people showing up would be saying to me, Kevin, we're here for you because we know you and we know your team and your track record, but we're really concerned about the vote split. And I'm sure John heard variations of the very same thing. And, at some point, as I looked at the entire landscape of what's in front of us and the outstanding caucus members and candidates we have, many of whom will be very disappointed in me, candidly. And I understand that. But I'm also thinking about them because, honestly, I would rather, as I said to them today on the call, rip off that Band-Aid now and preserve these outstanding candidates that could be future potential candidates or may even still run in the next election with John's party, then have to wait until October the 20th and look at unfortunately, at the potential of a newly elected NDP government that will destroy this province. I really believe that, and that's why I made the decision I made.
So is this the end of the BC Liberals?
Well, yes, for now, certainly in this election, but I cannot predict what, a future board may want to do. But certainly for this election, yes.
Your relationship broke down a couple years ago over party discipline and climate change. So, Mr. Rustad, are you moderating your views on climate change? Do you still believe it's not a crisis and that the science suggesting we're causing it is false?
As the Conservative Party of British Columbia, we are welcoming this opportunity to be able to work with the United Party. As I have said all along, we're not changing our principles and the values that we stand for. We're going to continue to fight for what we think is right for the people in British Columbia.
And sorry, the BC United is not dissolving. You're not changing your party's status. You're just suspending the campaign and
withdrawing our nominated candidates, yes.
They'll have the opportunity. And do you have a timeline? What have you secured in terms of commitments from BC Conservatives? Have they agreed to a certain number of candidates, a timeline for the vetting process?
I'm not going to get into those details except to say that there was agreement that we would sit down and go through all of the MLAs and candidates with the eye to fielding the best possible team of candidates.
Okay, and what about the caucus revolt that was rumored over your decision today? What happened there?
Look, I don't know. I don't speak to rumors, but, I wouldn't be surprised at all if some of my caucus colleagues were deeply disappointed. I wouldn't be surprised at all. And I understand why. I do. But I've always said, I'm always going to put the interests of British Columbia ahead of my own interests. My entire adult life, if you look at my history, has always been about fighting to bring together people, to unite people together, and to defeat NDP governments. And today, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I'm going to, sacrifice for it. I'm not running myself in the next election, but I'm going to be doing everything I can to support John and his team and make sure that they become the next government of British Columbia.
Just a couple more. So just in terms of donors who gave to BC United, and now it sounds like, so what's going to happen to their money? Is it going to go to the Conservatives who maybe they don't support their policies? Maybe they don't want to have their money going towards that party?
No, there's election laws in place that deal with all those things that limit your ability to do things like that. So no, what I've been clear about is that what we will do is make sure that we deal with our outstanding vendors, make sure that we pay our bills, that we look after our staff, and that will be what the money will be used for.
And so did your party simply run out of money? We've been hearing that donors and guarantors wouldn't give you a line of credit, that basically directors would have had to finance this election themselves.
Okay, so that's not true. I want to be very clear about that. But we were struggling on the financial fundraising side. Yes, I do acknowledge that. That was an issue that was an issue, and it's not because people didn't want to support us. And you may have heard some of this too, John. I won't speak for you, but what they're saying to me is, we're not going to support any of you guys until you figure out how to make sure you don't split the vote and elect an NDP government. That was a very common thing I heard from thousands of people.
You talk about the hours and hours of discussion and the turning point and traveling the province. When did those discussions begin? When did you turn to Mr. Rustad and begin the conversation?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's been some discussions that have gone on and off for many, many months, but obviously, as being reported in the media, those were not fruitful. However, more recently, there has been some discussions that went on at a low level between the party. The first time that Kevin and I actually met to actually have a straight-up discussion about what we can do to bring an end to David Eby and those policies and approaches in BC was last night at around 9 o'clock. And so we went many hours through that in discussing our approach, and then culminated that in additional discussions this morning.
And we talked, Mr. Falcon mentioned some weeks in terms of the candidates and the process, and you talked about the board. We are only 6 weeks out from that election. Do you have a target date by which you want to have the slate of candidates confirmed and approved and ready to go?
As soon as possible.
But do you have an estimate of how long it could take?
I'm assuming that it'll be done with a top priority to get done as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. My question is for Mr. Falcon. You say that there will be MLAs that will be disappointed, but were there MLAs and candidates that told you they were going to go over to the Conservatives if you didn't make that deal?
No, what I made really clear to the MLAs and the candidates, that this will be their decision, and that's important. We're not saying you must or whatever, but what we're saying is that we'll work through the process that John described, and those that are willing to do so will have the option to do so if there's a position that's available.
I meant prior to that deal you made.
Prior to?
Did you have MLAs yesterday and the days before telling you if you're not making this deal, we'll go to the Conservatives?
No, I did not. No, I want to be very clear about that. No, I did not. Yeah, go ahead. Sure, and I'll have to say. Well, look, I'll just close my comments with what I said at the opening. I came back to politics from the private sector for the same reason I left, for my children. Not them specifically. I retired from public life in 2013, you may recall, because my wife, Jessica, we had a 2-year-old daughter, and my other daughter was still in Jessica's stomach, and that wasn't public yet, but I knew. And I decided that I'd done 12 years in public life, and I wanted to leave and be a present dad with my wife Jessica, raising our 2 daughters, who I love more than anything. And I came back to politics for them, not them specifically, but for their generation, because I was genuinely concerned about the direction of British Columbia, especially under David Eby and the direction he's taken the NDP, which I would argue is an extreme left, not like the more moderate party of John Horgan. And that's why I made the decision I made today, because I'm not just thinking about my kids, I'm thinking about their generation. And I'm looking at a situation where we are seeing young people, I met them all the time, that are leaving British Columbia. They've given up hope living in the most unaffordable province in this country. And that's why I'm at peace with my decision. It doesn't mean I won't get a lot of flack, I will. But I'm at peace with the decision because I think this is the right thing for British Columbia. It is the right thing for my children's generation to get a new government that is going to focus on getting different results so that we can have a healthcare system that is there when we need it, that we can have streets that are cleaner and safer, and that we can help people not just provide them free government drugs, but free treatment so we can help people struggling with addiction get better.
Just want to close once again by thanking Kevin, thanking Ryan, and thanking their whole team in terms of this. I know how difficult this is. British Columbia used to be a place where people would come to build a future. Everybody here in this room, everybody in this province, whether they're here 5 or 6 generations, even longer, or whether they've just came here with the same hope to be able to build that future. Came with the same hope to be able to build what they wanted for themselves, but more importantly, what they wanted for their kids, for their grandkids. And you heard that in what Kevin has just said in terms of his children. And that dream and that opportunity of British Columbia has been lost. And we're in a situation today where 1 in 2 youth are looking at leaving this province. And that, to me, is a tragedy. That's our future. That is what British Columbia's future should be. And they shouldn't be leaving this province. Instead, they should be looking at this province with hope and optimism about a province that they can build a future, that they can buy a home, that they can raise a family, that they can be proud of to be called British Columbians. That's what we want to restore. Just that common sense change for all of British Columbia. Thank you, everyone, for coming today.
Thank you.